Hey there, this is Walter, CEO of World Civil, and in this video we are going to show an extended version of what we usually show about Forma. We're going to showcase some advanced features like multi-organization and multi-cluster, and at the same time I want to walk you through how this looks like to use this platform instead of doing things manually, which usually takes months to get the knowledge that you need to actually create a network that is production ready. One of the unique features in Forma is that you can actually take your own cluster, whatever you want, and deploy in there, instead of us centralizing the infrastructure like cloud providers do. So before I get into Forma, I had to create a cluster. This is not necessarily mandatory, as you can start with our managed service and we can host all the infrastructure, but probably for production you want to have your own infrastructure. So in this case, I followed this tutorial inside of our documentation site, which also shows me all the different options in infrastructure and the step-by-step that I need to follow to create, in this case, a Google Kubernetes cluster. So again, the idea is to have two separate organizations where they can select their own separate clusters and then connect each other through a blockchain network. So the first thing that I need to do is take the first organization that I have, which is called World Civil, and I need to configure the Kubernetes configuration for my cluster. So I need just a few data that is going to help me connect to the cluster, such as a service account, some certificates, and also some addresses. I take this from the tutorial that I was talking about earlier. Once your configuration is ready, Forma will try to connect to the cluster to validate the credentials, and if everything works fine, you can see the cluster just like this. So I want to connect with another organization, which means they have a separate credential set. So how can I connect with them? We have this section called Connections, in which I can get my ID, share it in another channel like an email or an SMS with another company, and then they can take this and add me as a connection, similar to what you do with LinkedIn connections. In this case, Beta is another organization with another username that received my ID. They add it in the request to connect form, and then I can accept again with my initial first organization so that we can officially invite each other to join networks. In this case, since I have access to both accounts, I can check that the Beta account, this new organization, actually already has a cluster configured so that we can both organizations can use a separate cluster configuration, keeping the infrastructure distributed. Now that I have two clusters configured and both organizations connected, I can go ahead and propose to create a new network. So creating a new network is a fairly simple process. You just need to add a name, you need to set up where you want the infrastructure to run, in this case my cluster initially, and then I can invite the other organization. What will happen in here is that since this is a shared task, this means that multiple parties need to approve before deploying this. Beta will get a notification as well as an email so that they can go ahead, see the details of the proposal, and decide whether to approve it or not. Now I can switch back again to my first organization and I can see that the proposal is approved. So I can simply go and click deploy, and this will create everything for me. This will create all the containers, this will create all the network configurations, all the disk storage, everything will be automatically created. And after a few minutes, I will get an email notification telling me that everything is ready, so I can go back to the console and I can access all my components that were recently created. Now I can, for example, check what components were created for me. So if I go to my nodes environment, which is different for each organization, I can see that everything is in there. I can obviously also go to my Kubernetes console and see the components right in there. This is just a filter version of that view so that I can have control and understand all the access and addresses for this network. Going back to my network, I can use the default ledger that was bootstrapped for my network, or I can create a new one. In this case, I want to create a new one called My Channel, and I want to invite beta. In the case that the network has much more participants, I can decide to invite just some participants to my new channel. Similar to when I was creating a network, beta will get a notification so that they can approve or reject creating this new channel in which they were invited. So again, this is going to take a few seconds. I can refresh the screen and I will get an email notification once the channel is completely deployed for me. Again, I didn't have to handle all the cryptographic materials and everything. Everything is created with just one click. So now that I have this channel, this new channel created, I can do whatever I want with it. I can, for example, go ahead and install our chain code, which, just like before, will require the approval of the other participants. So I just need to fill this form in which I set up a name. I upload the code into a zip format, and I need to set up the programming language that I'm using, as well as the version that this is going to be installed for the network. So again, beta will get a notification inside of their console. They just need to go ahead and approve it. And once this is ready, the proposing organization can proceed to deploy the smart contract according to what they agreed. In this case, this package should have been reviewed by the beta organization or another extra organization. And when I click deploy, again, everything is handled for me, copying the code, automating the deployment, sharing configurations, and so on. Everything is managed again through this same console. I don't need to execute any script. So here are the details of this smart contract. I can, of course, at any time, I can propose to upgrade the code. I can get the approval, or even better, I can even use an API to automate the continuous integration and continuous deployment of my whole pipeline. What happens when you use something like Forma that automates everything for you is that new participants don't need any extra requirements. They can actually control their infrastructure, probably not at the beginning. Usually at the beginning, one company creates everything for all the participants and manages everything, but eventually they need to have control. In order for them to trust the network, they need to have the infrastructure, they need to have the control. So you can simply add yourself as an administrator and then eventually remove yourself and give control and transfer this ownership of the assets of this infrastructure to the actual owner. So as you can see, things become quite easy. It looks just like a blockchain service, but behind the scenes things are handled quite differently. This is connecting to your own cluster in your own infrastructure into multiple cloud providers that could be Amazon, IBM, Microsoft, Google, DigitalOcean, or even bare metal containers. I hope that this video shows you the power of Forma, and if you want to create a trial, the link is in the description.